Welcome, everyone. We'll call to order the Public Safety Commission quarterly meeting for July 24th, 2023. We'll start with our roll call of commissioners. Sharon?
Here.
Brian?
Here.
Norma?
Here.
And Joe?
Here, thank you.
We may have our student commissioners joining us, potentially late. If we'll add them in if they're able to join us. Let's move to our Pledge of Allegiance. Norma, would you like to lead us?
Ready, begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. So can we get a motion to approve our agenda for tonight, if everybody's had a chance to review that?
I'll make a motion to approve.
I second.
And second, Joe. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, agenda is approved for tonight. We'll move forward. If everyone has had a chance to review our minutes from our last meeting of April 24th, we'll look for a motion to approve those minutes.
I'll move to approve the minutes.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Those minutes are approved from April 24th, 2023, without any changes that are noted. All right, we'll move forward with announcements and introductions. We've got a few from city staff. Before we do those, why don't we just go through here? Brian, any announcements or updates?
Not tonight, no.
Okay. Joe?
No, except the state of the hillsides are just a little concerning to me.
Norma?
Nothing for me tonight, thank you.
Sharon?
Nothing for me tonight, thank you.
All right, my only ad is similar to Joe. Just a thanks to all our city staff and our public and private safety partners out there for continuing to work through the 4th of July and all our summer events and our rather hot conditions out there. Speaking of which, Mike, Debbie, I think you had a couple items to go talk about with fireworks and flock and other things.
We made a public service announcement at the beginning. We showed it for July 4th, and I'm going to show it to you again just in case you haven't seen it. But our star is right here, Assistant Chief Drew Smith. So I will play this.
So within the city of Calabasas, fireworks are illegal. So they should not be at your home or within the city of Calabasas. So we are encouraging people to go to organized professional fireworks shows. Per the fire code and the fire danger that always happens in the 4th of July, this is very vulnerable and susceptible to wildfires. That's why fireworks are not allowed or are illegal in the city of Calabasas. So as summertime approaches, actually going into this 4th of July, we're going to be in a warmer, drier trend. So we have different set of vulnerabilities for wildfire. And so with a spark of an illegal firework could pose that threat to promote a large wildfire.
Excellent. So we have that shared on the website? at the moment, or YouTube? Where do we
Yes,
have that?
yeah, it's on YouTube.
Great.
It's also on the website.
Excellent. Well, thank you, Chief. There he is.
Good job. Can I make a comment on that?
Please.
The Acorn ran an article recently saying that Las Virgenes Unified School District is concerned about fireworks on their facilities, and they're looking at either trying to come up with some other type of light display, or the city will be looking for another location. But I kind of like their suggestion that look for an alternate. You know, there are other places that you can go other than Calabasas to see, you know, firework displays. But this city, our city, is particularly vulnerable. So it's a big concern. And I think that, you know, obviously you don't want to just throw it out completely, you know, without any discussion. But it's a good idea to start looking at things like that. Thanks very much.
And if I could piggyback on that for a moment, there's also the question of air quality. The air quality suffered for days after. So I'd just like to add that.
Great. Thank you both. Back to you. We have a flock update.
Okay. Commissioners, I'm happy to announce the city's been working closely with the Lost Hills Sheriff Station on purchasing additional flock cameras. Those are different. Those are license plate reader cameras. Those are different than the speed radar devices. I'm also happy to announce the city's purchasing 3 of those speed radar devices that we're going to be working closely with Lost Hills Sheriff to place them strategically throughout the city. And with the speed radar devices, we're also going to be able to get reports back with the software that these devices possess. We'll have good data to be able to then know for a fact where the speeding's occurring, what time of day, what time of night, and then we could work with Lost Hills Sheriff to place resources accordingly. Any questions?
No questions, but a comment. Saratoga Hills, Saratoga Ranch seems to have a lot of home burglaries. Now, there's only one way in and one way out, and I think the person sitting beside you lives in that area. In any event, without revealing locations of flock cameras, it would seem like they want to look at those kinds of statistics and decide whether they're going to place something there, because unless they're going to try and go across the wildlife crossing, and, well, that'll be interesting, there's only one way in and one way out. Thanks.
Right.
I've worked with the radar cameras in the past, and they're very good at identifying details, a lot of details. Every car that goes through becomes a record in the database. For it to be really effective, though, the Sheriff's Department needs a data analyst to be able to make those conclusions and decisions as to where is this pattern? Is it really a pattern, or is it an aberration? So I'm just hoping that will be part of the contract or agreement.
Well, I'll say that the software with these devices, it's a proprietary software, and it does the analyzing for us. And then it actually makes recommendations. They call them law enforcement priorities. So it will do the analyzing for us. And then we'll, in turn, hand over the report to Lost Hills Sheriff and then have discussions about where to place our valuable resources.
Excellent. Good answer. Thank you.
Mike, do we have an idea of timing on those, when those might be coming in?
The flock cameras or the
Yep,
radar?
the flock.
We're trying to just decide where we're going to put them first. We're going to purchase them probably this week. We'll put a purchase order in for them.
Great.
So I anticipate, we have to then install them. And so I think timeline-wise, it could be probably 30 days. Probably mid to late August, September, we'll be in business.
Great. Before we move on to the evacuation map, just Debbie for record keeping. We have Jay joining us now, so for our belated roll call. Okay,
Okay, the map.
the map.
I gave each of you a copy of our latest Zone Haven, which is the evacuation zone maps. We're still working on it. We got a couple more things to update on it, but that's 99%. It's good. It is on the website. So I just thought I'd let you know that we have the map available, and there is an app that goes with that as well.
I'll add too that the one thing we learned in the recent EOC training last month was we've also included zones that are even outside the city, because fires just don't stay inside the city limits. They burn through and around. So we've included in the map more comprehensive, all the zones in Zone Haven outside of the city, surrounding the city as well. And and we're actually going to start having some exercises with letting HOAs know about their zones being used and how they're going to. And we've also included evacuation routes. I know that was part of what one of the reports is going to talk about maybe, but they've also, in each Zone Haven zone, we've also included the evacuation routes in the zone. Any other questions?
Questions? Good. One thing I was curious about, are we doing any type of physical signage in the zones? So people, if they're walking through, areas, they'd know what zone they may be in?
No.
Okay. Just a thought.
Okay.
I think I've seen it in some cases where some communities will post signage with a QR code, so you can scan it, get the app, know what zone you live in, things like that. Like in more probably commercial areas, like in some of our retail establishments, things like that. So just a consideration.
We've even explored magnets to
Mhm.
put on refrigerators, but that gets a little complicated with all these zones. So certainly if the commissioners have any thoughts or ideas to physically get some information out there on each zone for each HOA, we'd love to get that information. We
Great.
just got to keep blasting people with it so they know what zone they're in.
I think you should get kids involved. It's like, do you have a friend in each Zone Haven zone in the city? Or how many people do you know in each zone? If they pick up on those kinds of things, it might transfer over to parents as well. So I just look at this brightly colored map and I'm thinking, oh yeah, that'll be fun.
Great idea. Yeah. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Mike. Debbie, any other comments, questions on announcements? Good. Great. We have one card in tonight for oral communications, so we'll call Dave Benjiri. We have 3 minutes to provide some comment. Mike here will guide you through the timing. If you can come up to the podium here in the middle, that would be great.
Mike's going to do any much of a difference.
Please.
I've lived here for 38 years, and I've seen the increase in crime, like most of you have, and I've heard some of the commissioners talk about it. I don't see it going away. So the question becomes, the challenge is for allocating resources and completing the circle. I mean, the city is great at getting these cameras, but if the cameras are not followed up with enforcement or deterrence, and we don't have the money for that, then the cameras are a total waste of money. So allocating resources and following up with key performance indexes, we shouldn't be looking at decreasing or reducing the impact of crime. We should be focused more on eliminating or reversing the process. And that should be the acceptance level, and that should be the pain threshold. And unless we admit the fact that it's getting out of control, we cannot put remedies in. And so the question of allocation of resources, making the most of what we have, as opposed to throwing money at it, is something that I'd like the committee to consider. but the increase in crime is unbearable. Thank you.
Very good, thank you. I'd encourage you to remain with us. I know a number of those topics are going to be coming up tonight, so I think hopefully you'll get some additional insight on it, but we appreciate you coming and providing some commentary for us. With that, we'll move on to our agency reports. Deputy DiMatteo, do you want to start us off with the sheriff's report tonight?
All right, good evening. Sir, how are you? Great. All right, so Mr. Banerjee, correct? Yeah, so he's got some good points, right? But however, it does seem that crime is up. However, in Calabasas, that's not necessarily true. The surrounding areas, yes. So I'm here to present the crime reports for April, May, and June. And so for those 3 months, in April, crime was down 18%. In May, crime was down 11%. And in June, crime was down another 11%. So yes, it may seem that crime is up, but that's because of the surrounding areas and also because of the fact that most of the people we do arrest don't stay in jail. So it kind of does seem that crime is out of control, when in fact it's not. But for the 3 months, I've combined the 3 months. I will be giving you the totals for those 3 months instead of breaking it down month by month. So for April, May, and June, we did have one rape. A report of non-consensual sex was filed involving a couple in a dating relationship. This investigation is being handled by the Sheriff's Special Victims Bureau. There were 2 strong-arm robberies through these 3 months. One incident occurred at Albertsons on May 15th at approximately 6 p.m. The suspect, a female adult, assaulted 2 loss prevention officers as she attempted to leave the store with over $1,000 in unpaid merchandise. The loss prevention officers were able to prevent her from leaving with that merchandise, and she fled the area. The reason why that's a robbery, that's considered a robbery, if you're confused, it may just look like a retail theft or a grand theft on the surface. However, when somebody committing that crime of retail theft or grand theft assaults somebody in the process, it turns into a robbery. Another incident, strong arm robbery occurred at Rite Aid on June 19th at approximately 6:45 p.m. The suspects, 2 female adults, assaulted an employee as they attempted to leave the store with over $5,000 in unpaid merchandise. They were successful, and the investigation is ongoing. There were 4 assaults in this time span. One of the incidents occurred again at Albertsons on April 14th at approximately 4 p.m. The suspects, a male and female adult, stole items from the location. As they left the location, they intentionally attempted to hit loss prevention officers with their vehicle, but were unsuccessful. 11 residential burglaries. 9 of the 11 burglaries occurred in the month of June. So that leaves 1 for April and 1 for May. So we were doing really well in those 2 months, and then it spiked in June. The common theme is backyard entry and targeting the master bedroom between 5 and 9 p.m. We had 12 commercial burglaries. 7 of the 12 occurred in April, and that was all from one incident. All 7 occurred at the Commons Shopping Center on April 7th between 4 and 5 a.m. There were 7 vehicle burglaries, and that just proves, as a reminder, to lock your cars and keep valuables out of plain view. We did have an additional 11 thefts from unlocked vehicles. So yeah, again, lock your car and keep things out of plain view. We did have 6 stolen vehicles. There was 1 arson. And the last 2 kind of go hand in hand. There was a stolen vehicle from LAPD's jurisdiction that was abandoned on Freedom Drive, and they set it on fire when they left. I'm not sure why, but that's what they did. In addition to that, we did have 3 domestic violence felonies, which brings the 3-month total of Part 1 crimes to 92. Any questions, comments, concerns? Go.
Brian?
I've always got questions. I heard you say a couple of times that there are robberies because in the retail, what do you call them?
Either
Theft
grand
control.
theft or retail theft.
No, the theft control people,
Oh, loss prevention.
loss prevention,
Yes.
thank you. Are we seeing more of them in our city?
Yes.
Okay, so there is a focus from the retailers that they need to be participating as well.
Right. So an issue we were experiencing. So, and what I'm talking about, the official term is called Estes robbery, right? So that is the act of committing a theft and in the process assaulting somebody on your way out to get away. So that turns into a robbery. However, we were experiencing a spike in retail theft, and the retailers weren't cooperating with us. They weren't filing a report. They weren't prosecuting. They were just saying, "Hey, we just don't want this person to come back."
Yeah.
And that really doesn't do much. However, again, also prosecuting somebody for retail theft or petty theft or something of the sort in Los Angeles County really isn't doing much either. So it's kind of a lose-lose right now, but hopefully we can change that in the coming months.
And are the retailers cooperating with the Lost Hills Station? I mean, when they have theft control or loss prevention people?
I know the city right now is helping our station with the retailers' cooperation. I know that an ordinance is on the table to make it mandatory that they do cooperate instead of just letting it be.
Okay,
So yeah, we are taking steps to ensure that these people do go to jail.
okay, good, thank you.
I was just wondering, of these type of robberies and their assaults, are they just physical assaults, like somebody hits somebody else, or are they bringing weapons? Is it escalating in terms of these people are expecting some opposition and?
Well, so most retailers, most big retailers, right? Some of them in the city of Calabasas have hands-off policy, right? You can't get involved. If a grand theft or organized retail theft is occurring, their employers are instructed to let it happen and then call. They're not even instructed to call 911 afterwards. They're instructed to call their loss prevention or their corporate first, and then they get authorization to call us. It's a joke. So in the instance that these companies do have loss prevention, they do have a little bit more leeway in stopping these people. So in the incidents that have occurred in Calabasas, it has been loss prevention attempting to stop them as they leave the store, and it's been physical altercation, but no weapons.
Okay. My concern is because of the public. They're in those stores. They haven't all cleared out just to allow these people to come in and these amounts are huge. How does someone not notice somebody piling up that much merchandise and doesn't think that, that's kind of odd?
Yeah, a lot of people out here mind their own business, unfortunately, instead of getting involved. But you can say that there's pros and cons for both. So
sure. No, I get it. I'm more concerned about people coming here expecting opposition than that if there are firearms involved or there are knives, people getting injured needlessly. And yes, I was aware of the city's new ordinance, or at least the discussion towards there,
Right.
which is something that I think we should all support
Right.
because of exactly the reason I'm talking about. If they want to operate in this city, well, they got to be concerned with the safety of its citizens. Thanks very much.
thank you.
Norma, any comments, questions?
I have none, thank you.
Great, sure.
I heard what you said, and to Dave over here, we sat in a meeting once before, back in February, I believe you were at that homeowners association meeting, and both of us were concerned with the open space. The only thing I will say to you, and I've said to my friends, the crime in Calabasas is not that bad considering everything around. However, they also say one is too many.
Right.
And so it hurts when it's in our community, even if it is only one. So I know there's a lot going on to help mitigate the little bit that is happening. And everybody's very mindful. Lost Hills Sheriff is very mindful, the city is very mindful, the homeowners association are very, very mindful of taking steps to mitigate any of it. And I wanted you to feel comfortable knowing that, and I know you know a lot about it too. So I just wanted to say that to you.
I've spoken to Mr. Banerjee personally. I've
Good.
checked on his home personally. You know, he knows for the most part that he's in good hands, but absolutely, you know, we can't be everywhere at once,
That's right.
you know, so that's why I attend city council meetings, HOA meetings, and
Yep.
we really beat the drum into, hey, this is how you protect yourself and your property, because you can't rely on us at all times. So, you know, we're trying. Obviously, it's not
Absolutely, you're trying,
it's
and
not
that's and
perfect, but
And the other thing I always say is that you've also got to take responsibility for yourself.
yes,
And if there are things that you can do around your own home, you need to do that.
agreed.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, so I mean, adding on to what everyone said, I think, I mean, I'm looking at this right here, and 20 unlocked vehicle thefts. And these could be easily prevented with education. And are there any like educational brochures that, you know, the city of Calabasas or even, you know, Lost Hills could assist in giving the HOA owners as well to distribute to their residents and other people as well around the city of Calabasas to easily prevent a crime? Because I know that, you know, obviously the Lost Hills can't be there for everything, and there has to be some kind of awareness or educational part from the citizens to kind of, you know, to help prevent crime on their own part. So, I mean, is there any possibility in terms of that?
Yeah, there are. We definitely have that stuff that we could disseminate. But however, there was another. There was something else we did in the form of signage, right? So there was a. Are you familiar with the Calabasas stairs? Yeah. It's on the dead end at Calabasas Road there, where it's a popular workout destination, right? So everyone parks their car, they go up to the trail, and then they go run the stairs. So last year, we posted a sign, right, with a big, bright red letters saying, beware. You know, your car may get broken into in this area, so hide your valuables, right? Just reminding people that, hey, thefts occur in this area. So last year, from January 1st until that sign was posted, which I believe was in August or September, we had around 20 vehicle burglaries from that little area. When we posted the sign, I believe last September, to today's current date, we've had 1. So yes, signage and reminders do help people. So it's definitely something that we are doing and that we will consider doing more.
Great. All right. Any comments, questions? Great.
All right.
Thank you. I would say the same. We've talked about it for as long as I've been on the commission. It's been part of the conversation about taking responsibility for your own property, for your own things. Obviously, there's a lot of resources in the community, but it starts with all of us and the citizens and our guests in the community to lock their cars, put their valuables away, to report crime, to report suspicious vehicles, all the things that we would expect people to do. So I would just, again, continue to encourage people to do that because the Sheriff's Department can only respond to what they know about, as you said. And if we're talking about statistics, having 20, 30, 40 less vehicle break-ins would do a lot for our statistics also. If that, while statistics are interesting to look at, it is your property. It is somebody's personal car or home, but it's important to take that responsibility. I did have one question, and this may be a follow-up. With the theft numbers that we have, is there an ability to break those down further just to residential and commercial? Just curious to see if it would help us see if these are coming more from our retailers or from our homes, or if it's about even.
Yeah, I mean, so for the past 3 months, it was pretty much even. 11
Okay.
residential and 12 commercial.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like that's the common theme throughout the year.
Okay.
So yeah, it's an interesting one.
Okay. Fair enough. Yeah, it's we'll have some additional conversations shortly about retail crime and other things. So yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense.
could I just
Yeah,
ask
sure.
one more thing? The last meeting we were at, we talked about some of the new ideas that the Lost Hills Sheriff Station is working towards, e-bikes on trails, et cetera. And you said, okay, there's training involved, so are we getting closer?
We're getting closer.
How far away would you,
It's on the verge. It just has to go through proper channels that are above me.
right?
So if it were up to me, I would already be out there. But yeah, we have e-bikes, the Real-Time Crime Center. We've got flock cameras. We're really trying to have technology assist deputies in the field to make it a lot easier. So we're getting there.
I know that there was recently a burglary in Vista Point, and they came in through the golf course, so.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, open space is still a thing, backyards, right? And they're looking just to get into your master bedroom. Master bedroom, master closet. Most of the burglaries are, if you live in a 2-story house, they're coming in through your balcony, and they're pretty nimble individuals. They will find a way. So
Thank you.
take all the steps you can to prevent that.
Yeah, Ryan.
You mentioned the Calabasas stairs were a dangerous location. Is there a place or like a map we can see where like in the past year there have been X crimes in this location?
Yeah, so if you go to crimemapping.com, you can, if you just focus on the city of Calabasas, you can isolate vehicle burglaries in the city, and you can check out where every one of those happened. Thank you.
I think with that, you mentioned the new crime center that I know that the station is working on. Did you want to talk about that for a couple of minutes for those that might be not as familiar with the plans?
In short, it is it's called the Real-Time Crime Center. It's going to be at Lost Hills Station. It will be staffed 24/7. I don't know. I hope it is. But it's basically going to be an area where we have access to live feeds of security cameras throughout the city, so that we can be a little bit more proactive in case there are no witnesses to something going on, we can see it for ourselves. So it's a step in the right direction to monitor areas that don't have eyes and ears on it at all times. So it's a work in progress, and hopefully this gets finished soon, because it's a pretty exciting thing.
Great. Thank you, Deputy DeMatteo. You may want to stick around. We've got a couple of things to talk about relate to all this, but we appreciate the time.
All right, thank you.
All right. Next up, Officer Haver. Welcome.
Good evening. For those of you that haven't met me, I'm Officer Wes Haver. I'm out of the CHP West Valley area office, and I'm to be giving the traffic collision reports for also the month of April, May, and June. And this is mainly for the 101 freeway that goes through roughly Mullen Drive, Valley Circle, over to Liberty Canyon. And they're broken down month by month. So the first month in April, for the northbound 101, we responded to just one traffic collision. It was a property damage only collision. The cause of this collision was an unsafe lane change. And the year prior, there were 7 traffic collisions for the month of April. So down quite a bit from April 2022 to April 2023, which is always good. And again, that's for the northbound side. Now for the southbound side, get a lot more afternoon traffic. We had 10 traffic collisions for the month of April. Of the 10 collisions, 5 were injury collisions and 5 were property damage only collisions. Some of the causes of these collisions were unsafe speed, rear end collisions. We did arrest a DUI driver. And then we also had unsafe turning movement, possibly by distracted driving. And then one we get every so often is unsecure load. Someone doesn't secure something in their truck, it flies off and hits an innocent party. So the year prior, there were 7 traffic collisions for the month of April. So we're up a few on the southbound side of the 101. Now for the next month, May, for the northbound 101, we responded to 5 collisions. 2 were injury collisions and 3 were property damage only collisions. Some of the same collision factors: unsafe speed, another DUI arrest, and then unsafe turning movement. The year prior, in May of 2022, there were 4 traffic collisions, so we're up 1 for the month of May on the northbound side. Now, for the southbound side, we saw 14 traffic collisions, 7 were injury collisions, and 7 were property damage only collisions. And injury collision, just so you know, could be anything from someone complaining of pain, doesn't even go to the hospital, they just will seek their own aid, or it could be someone who has more serious injury like a broken bone or a laceration or whatnot. So it's a pretty wide variety when it includes injury collisions. Some of the causes of these collisions were all the same, except unsafe lane change, which we see quite a bit in traffic. The year prior, in May of 2022, there were 9 traffic collisions, so we went up quite a bit, from 9 the year prior to 14 in 2023. Now for the final month, the month of June, heading into summertime, for the northbound side, there were 6 traffic collisions. 3 were injury collisions, which 1 was a fatal traffic collision. I can speak on that a little bit. It's still not completed. Sometimes it takes quite a while to complete these fatal traffic collisions. We do a pretty thorough investigation, which try to find closure for that family member that lost a loved one. So usually it takes quite a few months. But for this one, I know it was on the northbound 101 late at night, and it was the Las Virges Canyon off-ramp. It was a solo vehicle collision where the party went into a tree. So prior to that collision, we did get 911 calls of a possible DUI driver, which I urge the public to call, because if we get those calls, we try to get to them before they hurt either themselves or someone else. So continue to call 911. It is an emergency call if you spot a DUI driver, whether it's during the day or night. And then there were 3 property damage only collisions on the northbound 101 at that time. All the same collision factors. And then the year prior, June of 22, there were 6 also. So 6 this year and 6 last year for the northbound 101. Now for the southbound 101, we responded to 5 collisions in the month of June. 1 was an injury collision and 4 were property damage only collisions. Unsafe speed was the cause of collisions, and then unsafe turning movement were also some collision factors. The year prior, there were 4 traffic collisions for June 2022, so we're up 1 again. For, again, the southbound side of the 101. And then those are the traffic collisions reports for the 3 months, April, May, and June on the 101. Does anyone have any questions for me? Brian, you got a question?
Just out of curiosity, when you're ticketed going through a construction zone, how expensive is that?
It can definitely be a pricey ticket, because not only is it the ticket you receive, there's also usually a penalty assessment associated with that, which can be, depending what you're doing as you go into that cone zone. But luckily, there's a lot of seen a lot of commercials, a lot of Caltrans commercials trying to, get people to slow down around construction areas, which is very important, because fortunately, we lose a lot of Caltrans, employees. And I actually went to an event in remembrance last month, which was really nice. They do that for the families and the brothers and sisters of the fellow coworker, because it happens pretty frequently. And we see a lot of contractors who aren't even necessarily Caltrans employees that become victims of this, which is, sad to see.
I bring that up because the stretch along where the Annenberg Critter Crossing is going in is a construction zone. And I think I read somewhere that the penalties are doubled.
Yeah.
in a construction zone, so, yeah. And there are a couple other places where they're working on the freeway, so just be careful out there.
Yeah,
Watch your speeds.
that's a good point. It's doubled in construction zones. It's very common, associated fee with that. So,
Okay.
and me going through that area, when I'm not in a patrol vehicle, of course, is you see some pretty egregious speeds through there above what we're recommending for that area for sure.
Thank
Good
you.
point.
Yeah, I had the same comment. In both areas, there seems to be one just as you come towards Parkway Calabasas too. There's signage up in both locations that say it's 55 and it's going to be enforced. And yet I've driven through there and some people don't even bother to stop. So I guess without giving away too much, how are those things enforced? And then I have some other questions about your stats as well.
It just depends on resources available to do the enforcement. So a priority like that, that fatal traffic collision I mentioned, something like that's going to tie up our resources for the majority of the night. So we wouldn't see any speeding, enforcement on that overcrossing area on that given night because, generally at a fatal traffic collision, you would have anywhere from maybe 4 to 8 officers working that scene along with a sergeant.
Right.
Which that's a good amount of resources. I don't want to say how many of our resources it ties up, but it's a good amount for sure.
Yeah, the one at the wildlife crossing is fairly evident. The one that's closer to Parkway Calabasas, I can't see what they're doing that they're saying this is a reduced speed zone. So
Is it in regards to the concrete center divider? I know
maybe
we're
maybe it
working
has to do with that. Yeah.
So that closure is worked on at night. So a lot of the closures are at nighttime because it's just a less impact on traffic.
Sure.
So by 5 in the morning, they're already picking up that closure because they want to get that traffic, say, coming from the Conejo Valley heading towards, either downtown LA or the west side. They need to pick up those closures to get that traffic going as smoothly as possible. So it's
Right.
just picked up really early. If you get up and watch the news really early, you can see people like, Ginger Chan on KTLA 5 talking about like closures and be picked up around 5. But a lot of times they might leave the signage there or turn around, or maybe they forgot to turn it around. I don't know what Caltrans, because that's a different department than us,
Right.
but there might be some sort of protocol where they can leave that 55-mile-an-hour sign out there. I'm not sure.
On all the other statistics, when I look at numbers and I'm wondering, well, what are other factors that they take into consideration? I mean, year over year, we can assume that traffic load is building, that there are more people on that stretch of the highway. And so when you're looking at stats, do you take that kind of factor into consideration when or is it just, okay, we had 7 this year, we had, 6 last year? And I'm trying to get at, I guess, what are some of the causes and what are some of the things that we might be able to focus on? And without other information other than just numbers, it makes it difficult. I also wonder, when do these collisions happen? Are they all happening in a compact, a period of time, or are they evenly spread over, morning, afternoon, night, late at night? How does school being in or school being out affect these kinds of things? Because if we can remind people, hey, okay, school's out, more traffic on the roads, et cetera, or more people going someplace. I guess more information gives us an opportunity to try to focus more on it.
Yeah,
rather
absolutely.
than just
Schools and, holidays where, certain government entities don't have to go in, you definitely see a drop in people utilizing the freeways. I can tell you, as far as those heavy traffic collision numbers on the southbound side, it would be that evening commute. That generally starts, vehicles start slowing down anywhere from, Lost Hills to Las Virgenes heading south on the 101. And you just, people that maybe aren't from the area don't realize it's going to slow down there. They do those rear-end collisions. So there are factors like that is pretty common. But all the crashes are put into a database, SWITers, and it's up to people, above my pay grade where they might do special enforcement, like we do maximum enforcement periods on holidays to try to reduce the fatalities, because so many people travel on holiday weekends, which is amazing, because about half, usually when these stats come out for like a 4th of July holiday weekend, out of the fatalities, about half the people that pass away aren't wearing a seatbelt. So it's mind-boggling to me that people still don't wear their seatbelt every time they get in their car and wear it properly. So I grew up in a first responder family, so it was second nature to me. And that's on you tonight. If you have a passenger in the car, they happen to notice not wearing a seatbelt, make sure they wear their seatbelts when they get in your car. Be that good, either driver or passenger. This is presentations I give. It's one of my favorite things to do. Used to be the public information officers to give new teenage drivers those, lectures and how to keep them safe as they go on the new adventure of driving. And one thing I really stress is wearing the seatbelt. So,
Thank you very much.
absolutely.
I don't have anything to add. Thank you very much.
Sure.
Good, thank you.
Gentlemen?
Absolutely.
One question I had unrelated to traffic. As we have been talking a lot with the sheriff, organized retail crime has some jurisdiction with Highway Patrol also, as with the task force. I just wanted to bring it up tonight. I don't know how involved you are or this station is in particular with that task force, but just curious if there was anything you're able to share about how Highway Patrol is involved, or it's something we can look at maybe for a future meeting.
Absolutely. So what's really nice about our office, West Valley, is we got a new lieutenant in a few months ago who's from the area, and actually prior to coming there, he was in charge of the Southern Division, which is LA County Retail Theft Task Force. So basically, because it's a statewide issue, Gavin Newsom allotted funds towards that, and essentially put together these task force, similar to like a vehicle theft task force. So it's a big problem that we're certainly addressing and putting resources towards it. And I know Lieutenant Adam Smith would, if you like him, he would come anytime to present on his great passion for that past work. And he's actually, for our office now, since he transferred to West Valley, he took over the street racing task force, which I'm sure you guys will be pretty happy to have that in our office, because in Southern Division there's 9 different CHP offices, and that gentleman's in charge and out of the West Valley area, which is really nice card to have.
Great. No, that's appreciated. And I think to Deputy DiMatteo's point, there is a reporting mechanism, I think, also through this task force if there is organized retail crime incidents. So we just direct people to the website, but I think it is something we might speak about in the future in a little more depth to just understand those resources for the community. So
Absolutely.
Thank you again for coming out. We appreciate the time.
No problem. Thanks, man.
All right, we'll move forward with our fire department report. Chief Smith, welcome.
Thank you. I get a bat cleanup. All right. Yeah, well, perfect. Well, thank you to the city of Calabasas. So I've also combined the 3 months, and I didn't see anything that was out of bounds, I guess you could say. But your fire family is doing good and maintaining a healthy workforce, and appreciate your support. So For the combined months of May, June, and July, we had a total of 8 fires, 4 of those of which were vehicle fires, 2 were small brush fires at a quarter acre or less, and 2 were very minor structure fires, but one of them did have some damage associated due to where it was located in the structure within the walls. We had a total of 350 medical runs, 80 of those which needed advanced life support, 163 of basic life support, and we transported 248 patients. We had 0 hazmat calls. We had 6 hazardous condition calls. We had 89 service calls and 121 good intent calls. And you're not leading the pack on snake calls in the area, but for 3 months you had 64. So as last time I presented, I said it'd be on the rise. So you're averaging right there at 20 a month. And so your Calabasas fire stations, or within the city of Calabasas, you're averaging 7 runs a day within the city of Calabasas. So you'll be on point for half the year to probably reach the mark at 2,600-ish if things stay where they're at. Just some little statistical data of what Calabasas has to offer us, which is emergency response. Looking into the future on things, we're looking into wildfire season, of course. We do that daily danger risk analysis. I know that we distribute that information to all the cities and unincorporated throughout the area, so you should be well informed. Where, of course, I appreciate Debbie and Chief Dyer with Zone Haven and all the working groups that we've done. It's going to be a great tool for us. And then coupling with that with Office of Emergency Management and how we unify the messaging and how that gets out. And it's not just wildfire, it's all risk for those zonings. So the zoning helps us have geographical reference. We may have messaging that may say north of, south of, east of, west of, but people knowing where they're at and location to where they live and play is very valuable. And also it has been brought up before on Know Your Zone with signage that you're in Zone X with QR codes. So great, you're like a mind reader. So that has been talked about in our working groups on as this Zone Haven evolves and how it looks. So I could say that the Santa Monica Mountains were the first to actually have a good organization and the pilot behind Zone Haven and how it's going to look. So if you look at the total map of Zone Haven, you can see some relationships with everybody who has their own number, and how we have a 3-letter designated for Calabasas, and you can probably put together for Malibu, and you can see like, oh, okay, so how we try to coordinate that through the community so it has clarity rather than unassociated numbers and random letters. So there's some coordination behind that. Thank you for the EOC exercise we were able to participate in, and those that were here, I think it was a great learning tool for a lot. And as far as emergency management goes, that was, I would consider, being on the bunny slopes for things, because it is a pressure cooker on an incident for your first responders. But the unification of how we come together with an EOC and the expectation from us and you to us, that's what ties it together, is that working relationships that we have. And the only way we can have that outside of emergency is by practicing. And going into our practicing, we yearly do a very robust mutual threat zone drill with our cooperators, which is LA City Fire, Ventura County Fire, National Park Service, National Mountains Recreation Conservation Authority, the fire agencies, and also with all of our law partners on how we're going to do evacuations. And we have actually a job aid. Actually, Chief Dyer was at this one that we did just this last month, and we had great success with it. So every year we do it in a workshop forum to where we have the functional groups that are responsible with your plans, operations, your law, that we teach to the job aid. We do the revisions right then and there, and then I get it back out to all the working folks from Lost Hills to LAPD to everybody, that now we have that living, working document that we've trained to, rather than just going up and talking about how we're going to do it. We actually get to practice. We have a job aid towards that. So, and then I invited Chief Dyer in to give some oversight, and also if he saw anything that we can enhance for what we're doing, it was really beneficial by far. So every year we make it better. Also, Office of Emergency Management was there as well. So that's enough from me. Otherwise, I like to talk about this fire business, so I'll see if there's any questions from you.
Questions, Brian?
Couple of questions, thank you.
You bet.
Where can I find out more information about the daily danger risk analysis?
So I can get that to you. So
Okay.
it's pretty simple. If you go to the County of Los Angeles Fire Department website, it'll be in there that'll have daily fire danger. And then it actually has a daily fire danger report. But we're also partners with the National Weather Service. So if you go into the Google and you put in Fire One, FIREONE, in the Google, and then put NWS, National Weather Service, it'll send you to a page that we've built with the agencies that gives you all the weather information, fuels and fire danger information, a PowerPoint on what the daily fire danger is and how to use it. So I'll give you a homework assignment. I want your feedback on it, Brian. So go to Fire One and NWS, put that in Google, and you can scroll down and you'll see LA County fire danger, and it'll link you right to what our daily fire danger is. And the way that that's done is we have 6 forecast zones in LA County, so we can look at the relative risk, whether in the Antelope Valley, the Santa Cruz Valley, the LA Basin, Catalina, or the Santa Monica Mountains, or the High Country. And it's basically, we use fire history, 100 years worth of fire history, past climatology, current climatology, puts it in the Whopper computer, if you will, and comes up with a burning index. And that burning index is a threshold, so we know if we're meeting a burning index threshold, that we know that we have a different set of climatology and fuels vulnerabilities to promote large fire growth. Not if a fire will start and spread, but if we have large fire growth. And large fire growth in the area is about 8,000 acres over the first 24 hours, and with extending over the first 72 hours to 25,000 acres. And that's usually when we have Santa Ana winds. We don't have large fire growth routinely under a day like today, even though it's hot. If we don't live in a wind-dependent fire regime, so I know it's a lot of information, but go to Fire One, Brian. Mm-hmm. And you can see, and I want your feedback if you wouldn't mind.
Okay.
If it was simple for you
You'll
to
get
use.
it. The second question I had is, I know that when it comes to the Sheriff's Department, we have every 5 years, I think, we have this negotiation or interaction with the Sheriff's Department as to what staffing in the city looks like. Do we have a similar arrangement with the LA County Fire?
So we evaluate our staffing levels, and we can modify those staffing levels daily. So I know with the meeting, if we're going to look at, are we going to open up a new fire station? Do we need a paramedic squad? We internally look at that data, whether we are outgrowing the population and the call volume is outgrowing what our fire staff has in the area. So as far as going to the cities and talking that, I would ask my chief deputy on that if we've done it, but I've never been involved in that, but that is evaluated on a constant basis. I have to do that every year based upon statistics and crawl data, as we call it.
Okay, thank you.
So the short answer is Calabasas is a property tax pass-through city. We do not have a contract. We don't do contracts with the fire department.
Okay.
What Chief Smith's talking about, though, is what he does have the ability to do is move resources around, and he does so based on fire danger and behavior on a daily basis. And then certainly during fire weather, he augments staffing, the department augments staffing as needed, depending on the burn index and other causal factors, that are out there. And that's even drawing resources from in the basin to bring them out here when the fire weather gets really bad. So,
Okay.
and he's very good about notifying us when he's staffing and moving resources around.
Yeah, so
Okay.
other cities within the county may be a fee-for-service city who sets the standard of what fire protection, just like you do with law enforcement and those negotiations, but with the pass-through monies just being a contract city, it's not a contract, it's all done through property tax.
Not really a contract.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's not a contract.
No.
Yeah, you get everything. Yeah, it's a great contract
Yeah.
for you.
Those are the questions I had, but I know Joe's going to want to ask you about orange pumpkins.
Ooh. You want to change the color?
I'm not quite sure why. Actually, I want to ask you about this brush fire at 3810 Las Virgenes Road. Whether that is the water district's property or it's something privately owned. Because it says that it started through the spread beneath a solar production facility and that the fire originated from a solar inverter box igniting and spreading to the grass below.
Correct.
So, couple of questions. Is there something that the owner of this property can do to remove flammable materials from close proximity to whatever the solar inverter box is? How could we have prevented this? I guess that's the important part.
So where the land was, and adjacent to that did do their dependable space. And so I could say that the property owners there along Las Vegas Road in the Water District is very good about their fire hazard reduction practices. So to me, there's a significant amount of grass there, and whether they cut it or not, it still has that debris that's on the ground. It didn't get large because actually they did their fuels reduction. It was a mechanical malfunction, and so there's nothing that really could have been done besides the quick action, us getting there and taking care of it. So as far as how could it been, it was a mechanical malfunction. It wasn't anything of any intent.
Sure. Talk to Southern California Edison about that. They often have, mechanical,
Correct.
failures
Oh, yeah.
that result in fires. So solar is great. We all are pushing in that direction, but you have to be safe about how you go about it. And yes, what you described was half a job. The other half is raking it and getting it out of there.
Correct.
So, that's also important. You can't just cut stuff and leave it on the ground.
Right, and there is, depending on the fuel type, different practice of what they do. So even if it was all raked, it still, with grass, has a high probability of spreading, not relatively fast, depending on what the weather conditions are.
Yeah.
But to make it barren is probably unrealistic to what's going to happen for what the palette is for the area. That we do want some of that,
Yeah.
the fuels.
Yeah, I pay attention to the humidity levels in Calabasas. And my understanding is for a large portion of the year, we're below, 60% humidity. And once it gets down to a certain point, that's a big problem. I also know that there's a new product out there by the company that makes Phos-Check, something called Phos-Check Fortify, which is something that can be sprayed on that makes plants less likely to lose all their moisture and catch fire. And I'm wondering, in a case like what we're talking about now, whether something like that would have been an effective thing to do. I understand that there are environmental concerns about it as well, so it has to be done carefully, but I just wondered what was your opinion of that new product and how it might be able to be used in Calabasas.
So we'd have to look at the products. So there's a lot of products that come to the table that we need to evaluate. So right now we actually have that product put in one of our properties out in the Santa Cruz Valley that were put on some vegetation, and we're actually going to do some testing on that there to see how it holds up, you could say. So we're evaluating it. We're not, Los Angeles County Fire Department is not, by any stretch of the imagination, spraying any of this stuff in fire prevention measures. But any of these new best practice applications could be looked at by us, and that is one of the things that we're actually looking at in conjunction with MRCA on that product. But we are not spraying that product or utilizing it this time. So it's in a significant research and development component with a lot of different agencies.
Good. Sorry? Oh, yes, helicopters, yes. Yeah, I heard about there are new night flying helicopter teams that are being funded by Southern California Edison. My understanding is it's something to do with a settlement, but they have a significant amount of money, and they go out in teams of threes. There's basically 2 helicopters and, you know, for lack of a better term, like an AWAC helicopter going with them. Is LA County able to use that kind of equipment as well?
We are actually. So there's the Orange County Fire Authority, Los Angeles County Fire Department, and Ventura County Fire Department that are utilizing and in a team effort with Southern California Edison. But your Los Angeles County Fire Department owns 10 of its own helicopters that have night flying capabilities and have since the 70s.
Oh,
We've been
good.
flying at night. Yeah, we started that, but I'll get to it. It's called the Quick Reaction Force. And so within those 3 counties, we have the ability to share those very large rotary wing aircraft that drop 3,000 gallons, the Chinooks. And we have one 100% dedicated Los Angeles County Fire Department, but we also have an agreement with Ventura County and Orange County that's a call when needed that we are able to call those resources to us. So one is located for Ventura County is at Camarillo Airport, and travel time to get to Calabasas is about 9.5 minutes. And the other one in Orange County, I don't remember where it's at, but I have to think. But it takes 18 minutes to get here, so those are done. But there's also contract air that we have. Talk about night flying. LA City Fire Department has a robust air workforce that we work with. So all your aircraft that comes to our fires, we have the largest air force through the agencies, whether it's the Angeles National Forest, Los Angeles County, Ventura County, LA City, to be on an initial attack fire. Just internally, you're going to get 3 helicopters on a first alarm brush assignment with us.
Great. And my last question has to do with the home ignition zone inspections. I know that they started in May, or at least they were hoping to at that point in time. So I'm just wondering if you can give us an update on how many homes in Calabasas have already been inspected, and to give the public an idea of you know, how many more have to be done. So
Okay,
if they haven't been contacted. I know one person who has had one already, so that was
Right.
good.
So we don't set appointments with the homeowners. Your firefighters go out every day and conduct the defensible space inspections. And with that, with the nearly 5,200 that's in, I believe, in the city of Calabasas, we have a total of 17,000 in the Santa Monica Mountains that our organization is responsible for. So it is a large task. So your firefighters go out and perform the inspections. It's all platform based with with an iPad. It gets done. So the homeowner may not ever know that your fire department was there. They will know if they get cited, though, that there's something that needs to be done. And so we're at 92% throughout the area. I would say that within the city of Calabasas, you're 98% done. I don't have a total on how many were in compliance or not in compliance, but I do know that I haven't been getting any heartaches from my engine companies and my staff saying that Calabasas was not compliant. We've had great things. I've actually had some great feedback from my engine companies that are doing the inspections, of people coming out and interacting with them, asking some very good detailed questions on best practice for the brush guns, because there's a lot of homeowners within the area that it's new to them, and we've been getting really good feedback from our interactions with the citizens and the homeowners.
Well, good, because that's our goal as well. get out and get as many people their homes hardened. So it's good to know that people are in compliance, but still, I'm sure that there are probably still things that they could do. And the important aspect is continuing to do them, that it isn't a one and done situation.
Right, it's year round.
Yeah.
It's year round. You just
Okay.
don't wash your car once a year, you gotta do it all year round. Mhm.
Good analogy. Okay, thank you.
Norma?
As always, first of all, a big thank you to our fire family. One of our neighboring communities has installed blue reflectors in their driveways to note that they're willing to have their pools used during a fire emergency. What's your feeling about that?
It's great anytime that you have an available water source, and we have some creative ways to get that. So we have special hose and appliance to get to those backyard pools, and there's also people that have been very proactive in putting what we call a draft water source in their yard that is actually plumbed from the bottom of the pool that we can pull out of the pool just straight from the front yard. So identifying those blue dots, which are called bot dots, if you will. They identify a water source, usually done in the street by the water company, say, hey, there's a hydrant here. But people have also been proactive in doing that with their own. So it's great for us because it gives us options. It gives us, under certain conditions, some flexibility if we need to grab water. We've even, some of these larger homes, we've had our helicopters draft hovering and drinking the water out of the pool. Chief Dyer.
Now, in the old days, the dot was what we used, but you could go on your phone and look and Google. You could go Google Earth and look and see if there's a pool in somebody's backyard if you really need to. And the devices he speaks of were actually first used in the Navy, and it's an inductor.
Inductor. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that we just throw in the bottom of the pool, and you can siphon that pool out pretty quickly. But now you could probably look on Google Earth and see who's got a swimming pool. Maybe.
And you don't need to ask their permission, you just go take their water?
During wartime?
Copy that?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
You bet. Thank you.
Sharon?
Okay, thank you.
Brian? Jay?
Yeah,
Thank you very much, Cap.
appreciate it.
We appreciate it, Chief. Yeah, stay safe out there.
Yeah, thank you.
We know this is busy time.
It is. Appreciate
Watch the
the
snakes,
support.
too.
Thank you.
All right. So now we have a special guest joining us tonight, our city manager. Kinnan, you've got a presentation for us.
Commissioners, it's good to be with you. Thank you for the opportunity to do a presentation. Foremost, while Debbie is loading the slides, I did want to speak. There was a question about the retail ordinance. Initially, that was put on our city council's agenda. It was tabled. We had some questions from some of the retailers and that actually will create a better ordinance, but also there is direction from the council to bring that to this commission. So before it goes to the city council, we'll schedule a meeting to bring that to this commission and look for your input on that as well. Ready?
Okay.
So commissioners, this is a report that I gave to our city council in June at the end of the month. And it's an opportunity to share some similar information with you and get your feedback. I just want to go over a few items with our contract. As was mentioned, the city contracts with LA County Sheriffs for law enforcement services. And we've been doing that since we became a municipality, since we entered cityhood. And our current agreement is a 5-year agreement. It expires next year. But each year, we're allowed to, as a city, to determine as best we can and set our law enforcement service levels. And that's done through a form that is called the SHAD 575 form. And really what that is it's a summary of the services that are received, or the number of personnel that are assigned and paid for by the city of Calabasas. One thing that's important to note is that the city contracts for what are called deputy service units. we do not necessarily contract for deputies. And there is some nuances to that. I'll explain that because there is some instances where we do specify perhaps a body, and I'll go into that in a little bit more detail. But these deputy service units include all of the indirect costs that go into that deputy, whether that's the vehicle, administrative support, clerical support, whatever that is at the station. And then the city has the opportunity to contract for additional services, usually in the form of deputies or law enforcement personnel that provide a specific function or task. And I'll talk about a little bit of those as well. The rates for the sheriff deputies are set by the county. This is not something that we determine. Again, it's set by the county. And in addition to the base rates for these deputy service units, the city has also assessed a surcharge, and this is a liability surcharge. And really what this is as you've watched the news over the years, as there's been excessive force or there's been lawsuits or wrongful deaths with LA County sheriffs, all those who are participating in that pool share that liability. And Councilmember Bazagian sits on as a representative for the city and for our area on that liability trust fund. And so he participates in those meetings and understands in more detail the cases that are being heard and what's driving up the cost. To put it in perspective, in 2010, there was a 4% charge. So there were the base rates of the contract and then a 4% surcharge for this liability. Most recently, coming up in this next fiscal year, we're seeing a 12% liability surcharge. In speaking with Councilmember Bazagian, we anticipate that to go up to another 1%, maybe 2% next year. So that cost just keeps going up. It's, again, this is driven by the litigation and the settlements and so forth that are happening in that area. If I could point your attention to the graph that's coming up, this shows a 10-year rate average of where we've seen the rates increase. Very steady over the initial probably 7 years. A dip during COVID and kind of corresponding with that down into just under 2%, 1.5%. And then our biggest spike historically in the last 10 years is this current fiscal year that we're in now is a 7.61% increase on our contract. So again, that's just the base rate. That's not including the liability surcharge. That's just how much the rates have increased on the base rates. And looking at what that costs the city of Calabasas, historically, if you go back to fiscal year 2014, 2015, the city was paying about $4 million, just under $4,200,000 for our law enforcement contract with the sheriffs. This fiscal year that we've just started, July 1, we are paying about $5.6 million in law enforcement costs. And commissioners, if I could, just to put that in perspective, one of the things I've heard in city government throughout the 18 plus years that I've worked in city government is, and I think we've all said this at one point or another, is I pay taxes. You know, these are my taxes. To put this in a context, the city receives just about $5 million in property taxes. So you and I, the property taxes that we pay total throughout the city is just about $5.5 million. So in essence, our entire property taxes go to pay for our law enforcement contract. I just want that to be clear. So now we'd receive other revenues in the form of sales tax and utility user tax, but in that real tax of what a property owner pays is really sucked up into that law enforcement contract, just to put that in perspective. It's a big amount. So commissioners, now I'd like to just dive into the actual 575, and we'll go through this and look at some of the different line items. You have 2 pages, main pages, and I've broken it up as we go through this, and we'll highlight each of these sections. So Debbie, if you could go to the next one. Thanks, Mike. So we'll start at the top, and we'll look at the deputy sheriffs that we pay for. So if you look across that column, the deputy sheriffs, we And you could go to the next slide. I think it comes up. Oh, if you could go back. So in our deputy sheriffs, we'll just go across that row there. We pay for 56-hour units. Again, we pay for deputy service units of 9. So you see that the new and then the previous. So we've maintained our status there. So we pay for 9 deputy service units at an annual cost of $499,000 per deputy service unit. Again, this is not per body in this case. This is per deputy service unit. That's a total cost of $4.493 million just on those deputy service units. And then when you add the 12% liability cost, it's an additional $539,000 for a total amount of just over $5,032,000. With that, if you continue to go across that, that brings us to about 26,000 hours, 26,200 hours of sheriff time, deputy time, and the required personnel for that is just under 15, between 14 and a half, 15 required deputies to meet those deputy service units. Again, so each unit, that deputy service unit is $499,000. That's a big number for those units. We'll go to the next slide. I'm making sure mine correspond here. There we are with our grant. We'll look at our grant special assignment deputy. This is, we pay for 0.56% of a special assignment deputy. This is Deputy DiMatteo. This is our community service liaison officer, our deputy that we share with Hidden Hills. So we pay 0.56%. Hidden Hills pays the remaining 0.44% for that community liaison officer. That comes to us at a cost of about $141,000, just under about $142,000 per year for that community service liaison. So when I said we don't necessarily pay for deputies, we do in this case. So in the, just when you see the patrol deputies, in essence, we're paying for those deputy service units. When we talk about a special assignment deputy, we're really seeing the full cost or a portion of that cost for that deputy. Next one. For our motor deputy, the city currently pays for a full motor deputy. That comes to us at a cost of all in about $363,000, and that gives us 1,700 hours for a motor deputy. Next one. We have also in our contract a law enforcement technician. This is really a fingerprint technician that is shared between the 5 cities, Malibu, Calabasas, Hidden Hills, Agora Hills, and Westlake Village. And so we pay that proportionate to city size, I think it is, and that's a shared cost that the cities have agreed to have that law enforcement technician, that fingerprint technician on staff. And then next is our community services assistant. We pay half of this. From what I understand in speaking with contract law, that's a cost shared with the city of Agora Hills. And this community service assistant has been dedicated in the past to vehicle parking type of enforcement activities throughout the city. And we'll go to the next. Second page of this, the 575, shows again how these deputy service units are scheduled out. So you have an early morning schedule, an AM schedule, and then a PM schedule. So again, not talking about bodies. So when we say the early morning schedule, we're not saying 2 deputies. We're saying 2 deputy service units are patrolling during that early morning schedule, and then 3 in the PM schedule. If you look across, if you go to the next slide, this is actually one of the things that we're correcting in this is this shows 1.6. One of that is our J-team deputy who serves in our schools. This is our student delegates probably are familiar with our J-team deputies that are on school campuses. And then 0.6 is a patrol deputy. So again, in talking with Captain C2, that 0.6 is really embedded in those previous early morning AM or PM schedules. So we only pay for 1 J-team deputy. Next slide. And then our motor deputy again is listed there. And then next slide. Again, this is a summary. This is our 0.56 of our community liaison deputy there. If you go to the next slide, you can see here just a summary of our costs that get us to that 5.6 million. So again, it's the 9 deputy service units, just over half of a community liaison deputy, the motor deputy, a law enforcement technician, and a community services assistant. That gets us to that 5.6 million that we discussed previously. During the council meeting, we looked at possible changes to our sheriff contract. And one of the things, we discussed different ideas with the council, received some direction, but the most important was to go back and communicate and discuss this in more details with Captain C2 on what can be done. So unfortunately, with some of the moratorium in hiring, even if the city wanted to hire more deputies or pay for more deputy service units, we can't. And so I want to emphasize that to the commission and to the council. And the reason we can't is there's just not enough bodies to do that. So if we were to pay for more deputy service units, in essence, we would be adding overtime on top of overtime for current deputies. And at some point, you lose the best, talent and brain cells of your deputy when they're working so much overtime. And so there was talk about perhaps reducing our motor deputy, and the idea was to reduce our motor deputy and pay for more deputy service units. Again, we may not be able to do that just because of the staffing requirements right now. There was also interest in working with Captain C2 to increase our community liaison deputy to a full deputy position. And so I've been exploring that with Captain C2 to see if that's a possibility. There may be an option of using Deputy DiMatteo and another deputy that would give us then 2 individuals that become very familiar with our community and are rotating between times here in Calabasas to support our community that way. And then the community services assistant, that is something that we might, again, this is pending final council decision, but we might decide not to have that position in the future, partly because we have other tools and resources available for parking and vehicle enforcement. And so that would free up some funds to then use towards other law enforcement activities. So with that, I think I'll stop here, Chair, and then answer any questions regarding the presentation, and then share some additional information for the commission as well.
Great, thank you for that. We'll go around for questions. Brian?
Yes, I do. Thank you. Good presentation. What I got out of it, listening to it, and because we've discussed this in prior meetings, is that because of staffing restrictions or inability to recruit, the station is not able to provide us with what we contracted for. And what it sounds like from this presentation is that the new contract is going to say, okay, so we'll lower our expectations.
So let me correct that. So we get what we pay for, and so I want to be very clear on that. And so if we in our contract have 9 deputy service units, 1 motor, half of a community liaison, we get that time. So unfortunately, what's happening though is because of the limited number of deputies that are available, not just at our station but throughout the department, those minutes or those hours are being done in overtime. And so we are getting our minutes, we are getting our hours, but it's being done with overtime hours. Now to increase that, it would have to be overtime on top of overtime, which becomes precarious.
Right.
Yeah.
Where I was coming from is the last time we had a discussion like this, we were told that and maybe it was mid-year, that the station was providing something like 92% of the contracted level of hours dedicated to the city, but that we should be feeling good about it because the other cities were getting less. And so, I mean, be that as it may, that's a, sheriff's department issue that I'm sure they're addressing and trying to come to grips with. So my question goes to, we've got big fan of Neighborhood Watch, big fan of volunteers on patrol. Also, if we are looking at, as I've seen, having volunteers man that video center at Lost Hills Station and identify opportunities that they then refer to the watch commander to respond to. Where do you sense first off, the sheriff's department? Secondly, can the city be supporting this in some way, shape, or form, getting more volunteers involved? And third, what protection will our volunteers have? For example, I'm sitting at a video monitor in the Lost Hills Station and I see somebody stealing something. So I ring up the watch commander and I say, I just saw somebody, here's a description. And I give them the wrong description. And somebody gets arrested and sues the sheriff, the city, and me for misidentifying the perp. Is there any protection that this program, volunteer program, is going to be providing to our volunteers? That's all I got.
Good question. In talking with Captain C2, I'm not aware that there will be volunteers used at the Real Crime Center. That may be an idea that was floated at one time. I don't know if that's the direction that the station is going right now. I do know that she will be using law enforcement personnel, probably non-sworn, not deputies, but non-sworn. For example, some of these community services analysts might be able to be staffed there. But also the station will be contracting with private security firms who are trained to be monitoring some of this. So again, I haven't heard the idea of volunteers as of late. I know there's been a lot of changes with the Real-Time Crime Center, but I know that right now it looks like it's going to be staffed by law enforcement personnel or contracted personnel.
Okay, thank you.
Hi. Thanks, and thanks for coming. I appreciate it. It was a good presentation. If I could ask one thing, I can't read these little square boxes in this report, and I have a hard time reading that screen as well. When you finally got to the service level summary, I breathed a sigh of relief. Finally, I could actually see something. So that's my technical request there.
We'll have the full slide sent to you, the full page slides. So you can have those.
Yeah. On 8 by 10.
Put them on 11 by 17.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. We're not all young people on this commission. I'll ask Jay and Ryan, what's that say? No. It's a problem that we can't get more services. And it's a problem that it costs us so much and that the settlements have kicked the prices up as much as what they have. There's not an easy solution to that. But do you have any sense of if the city could increase and, they had the money to do it, how much more would you want in terms of deputy hours? Does the city have any numbers that they'd like to hit?
I think the best way to answer that is more is always better. I don't know if the specific number. What we are doing, and this is again in cooperation and consultation with Captain C2, is the City Council has authorized me as the city manager to enter into a contract with a private security firm. This is Covered 6. They work with Las Virgenes Unified School District. They're partners with Hidden Hills, Beverly Hills, a few other cities. And we are bringing in Covered 6 as initially, again, as a consulting basis to help us understand where we might be able to deploy some private security measures with some of these issues that we're seeing with both home burglaries, especially those related to open space, and then second, some of the retail burglaries. Again, this would be a coordinated effort between a private security firm hired by the city and then also working with the sheriff's department. The other thing that this private security firm will be doing is working as a liaison between the city and some of our HOAs and our neighborhood associations. And so this, again, at the city's cost, we'll be working with the HOAs and the neighborhood associations to look at ways that we can collaboratively use some of the best technology out there that the Lost Hill Station may not be able to use yet because some of the requirements by the county, but that a private security firm can.
Good. Well, you segued into my second question, and you just answered it, so that's good. You are looking at alternatives.
We are.
Okay, that's
And
great.
we realize that, that the cost is very prohibitive. If you think of just adding 2 deputy service units, that's at a cost of $1 million. And so that, that increases our contract 20% just by adding those 2 deputy service units. So what we're doing is exploring other avenues or opportunities where we can, at a much lower cost, increase our presence and the talent that we have looking at crime and not just crime response, but preventing crime as well.
No, I think they're all good ideas. Brian's suggestion in terms of neighborhood watches, I think what I'm hearing tonight a lot of is don't just sit there and wait for the fire department, the police department, whatever, to show up. There are things that we all can and should be doing, and with a citywide effort, we can accomplish a lot more. Some people, of course, take the attitude of, oh, don't be such a busybody, oh, you're going to rat on your neighbors, right? But the point is that it always improves the possibilities of preventing crime if people do pay attention. I know that, simple things like just walking around the neighborhood with your dog, if you're paying attention to, cars you've never seen or people on property that you've never seen, it's probably a good idea to say something about those types of things. So the more we can do to get everybody involved in the effort, the better, I think. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Kendon. That was a lot of information that I haven't seen before. I have just a tiny question. Do we have a private agent that we use for parking tickets? And what is the revenue?
We do. So right now, most of our parking enforcement is done through one of the private security firms that the city currently employs. That's SecureAll. And much of the revenue that comes in really is just funding that effort. It's not a revenue source per se for the city. In fact, one of the misconceptions I think for most communities is even just parking tickets issued by our deputies or even a police department, most of that money goes to the state. It is not retained locally. And so people will always say, issue more tickets and generate that revenue. It doesn't. We don't get to capture that revenue. That usually goes to the state. In our case, with the private security, it's really just funding the opportunity to have those private security folks out doing that parking enforcement and monitoring.
Thank you, Kendon. I appreciate that. I just have a couple comments. Since COVID's happened, there's been a dramatic shift in law enforcement, security companies, and the willingness of people to go to work for them. There are lots of opportunities out there. And I find from working with the private security company that I do, the retention rate is very hard. Everybody is starting to look for alternatives similar to what you just said, and comes from technology. I mean, there are many things that we're starting to do. No one's sitting back and watching things happen. Matt and I had the pleasure of meeting with Captain DeSito this week, And it was eye-opening and right on track with a lot of things that we've discussed as a commission up here. So I was very happy, and Michael Dyer it was a very good meeting, and very helpful. There's a lot of activity. No one is sitting back and letting things happen. They're trying to do they're looking at their volunteer program, they're looking at their Explorer program. Even that is very low. They're having trouble getting people to be part of the Explorer program. So with that, I just want to say for everybody sitting here, everybody's working very hard on a lot of these elements, from the fire to the police, to the Lost Hills, to the city. We're all very aware, and everybody's working hard. There's a lot of activity going on. And there's one last thing I'll say. Joe alluded to it. If you see something, say something. If you see something in your neighborhood, if the security companies see something, we hit hard with see something, say something. And getting those private security companies to work with all of the others in the neighborhood is very, very important at this point. I mean, we need that spoke in the wheel, that everybody's talking to each other so we can all partner together. And I know we're all working on that.
Yeah, and Commissioner, thank you. That's really important. One of the reasons that we held the meeting in February with the HOAs and the neighborhood associations, we specifically invited representative security teams from each of the HOAs or neighborhood associations. The idea was, again, to create this nexus and communication between the different firms and the Lost Hill Station. Unfortunately, Captain C2 has reported that none of those firms have reached out to her or her staff to continue that dialogue. And so that's where we see this private security, again, this firm that the city is paying, again, general fund monies to have this, is to be able to work with those security firms at the different HOAs at our retail establishments and have that communication that is vibrant and robust and
Right.
going forward. Thank you.
And I think we just got to keep reminding them that we do need to work together. No one's taking each other's job.
Mm-mm.
It's the fact that we need their help. We need to work together in this community. In fact, as you know, we have 16 cameras on the lake at this point, and our person from CPHA is meeting with Captain C2 regarding all those cameras. And I know Deputy Mateo has been down there and given us great guidance on where to place them and et cetera. But those are things that we can help each other with throughout the community.
Great. Thanks, Sharon. Ron, Jay?
I just wanted to say thank you for the insightful presentation, but I have no comments.
Yeah, thank you for the presentation. The slides were really good. Did you use PowerPoint or Google Slides?
PowerPoint. I'm unfortunately old school.
I figured. Thank you, nonetheless.
I'm a dinosaur, so.
A couple things from my side. Again, thank you for coming out and sharing it all with us. I think one thing I did notice on the last slide, if maybe Debbie we can go back one, the law enforcement technician was removed from the proposed changes aspect. Is that removing that service altogether?
Very good question. So I didn't put that in the proposed changes because we weren't looking at changing that at all. So because that is a shared cost with each of the other cities, we didn't want to put that as an item of discussion for the council, because our removal of that, we still rely on that. We need that fingerprint technician, and removing our share of that cost would just push that burden to the other cities, but we'd still be using that resource.
Got it. With the J-team member that we assigned to the school specifically, is there any co-funding from the school district for that, or is that a city cost?
That's city cost. That's
Okay.
correct.
Okay. And has that ever been a conversation? I know they obviously provide private security in addition to, but is that something that is a conversation that we could look to a district to have to, again, expand the service level a little bit? If that was
I
something
know
we
in
wanted
previous years that the school district and the city worked together on some grants
Mhm.
that funded additional J-team deputies. I know that we have 3 J-team deputies for the entire station, and that those costs are shared between the 5 cities in the area.
Got it. Okay. And we'll talk a little bit more about volunteers, I think, in a minute, too. It is something that it seems like there's an opportunity for the city to help itself. So we'll come back to that in just a moment. But, yeah, I think anything we can do from our commission standpoint to help look at this a little bit further, we're glad to do it. And it's understanding there are limits and parameters, obviously, with increasing staffing. It seems like there's opportunities with private security and technology and some of these other things. So much appreciated.
Thank you.
Great. All right. Well, we'll move forward onto our informational items. This is something that we proposed the last meeting that we had, which was to take this commission and divide it into smaller subcommittees to continue some outreach, to continue some ideas and research in between our meetings. We'll call it an experiment for now, but I think it's seemingly been well received, and we've gotten some good feedback so far from that. So I just want to take a few minutes, because I know we've already invested a great deal of time, which all valuable time, but we're running a little behind. So, but for each of the groups, just to speak about any of the new conversations that have happened and any future plans, looking for the next meeting and things to continue working on. So, Brian, why don't we start with you on the fire and emergency preparedness side?
Okay. I'll use my I'll use my hold-down voice and talk real fast. The EPIC is my area that I was talking about. Relative to home ignition zone evaluations, we now have 4 qualified home hardening volunteers that we can put out in the field. We have completed more than 110 assessments to date, and we continue to exhibit at community events highlighting highs and emergency preparedness. Second area is emergency communications to home occupants. That's our ECHO emergency communications platform. I was really tickled that we were included in the city's June 28th emergency exercise, and we were able to use the ECHO platform in that. EPIC had 2 members, Norm Goodkin and me, in the EOC. We had 5 members under a pop-up in the parking lot, and 14 members who logged in during the event, spread out in the city, including Commissioner Citron. The platform worked as designed and will be a valuable resource in an actual emergency that we're still building out. Projects in development, because we're not standing still. We are upgrading our website. That should be done very soon. We will also be rolling out the EPIC FSC smartphone app, hopefully within next month. And we are in the process of creating an earthquake home safety assessment, which would be akin to the home ignition zone evaluation, whereas HIES looks at wildfire, earthquake home safety assessment looks at risks in the home and around the home in the event of the next major earthquake. And again, under the structure of a free assessment, and we're going to be the people who we will be designating as assessors on that are people who have been through CERT as a point 1. You got to be through that, and then we're looking for a little bit more training for those people before we start rolling this out. And other than that, I'm not doing anything.
Thank you, Brian. All good stuff. All good stuff. Yeah, the earthquake assessments I'd imagine you'll have, with the website, the app rolls out, there'll be additional guidance on there too, right? Great. Terrific. Why don't we move along? Joe, Norma, communications, outreach, and training. what you got for us?
Okay, I'm going to speak for our subcommittee, and these are just the high-level recommendations. There are a lot more details to these things, but until we set priorities and we determine what we're going to work on, there's no need to share it at this point. But following up on something that Brian just said, we recommend that the city have a CERT team and that residents be encouraged to participate in the city's emergency response in this way and as part of a communications network of licensed amateur radio operators. And Commissioner Citron is already a member of CERP, and we have people that are also involved through ECHO who can provide training. We recommend including local businesses in zone haven zones. We propose using resources like the Institute for Local Government to develop effective outreach that increases public engagement. We have ideas for public engagement, including creating events on public safety concerns that the residents can participate in online or in person. And we recommend proposing to City Council that city commissions be allowed to work jointly with other commissions and departments in our city, such as the Environmental Commission, the Traffic and Transportation Commission, the Mayor's Youth Council, and the Communications Department. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe. All great ideas. I think, Mike or Debbie, did you want to comment at all on the CERT side of things, or we can save that for the next section?
If we could say that for the next session, we're going to discuss the moving parts about CERT.
Perfect. All right, we'll move over. Jay, Ryan, although it's summer vacation, on the school and student safety side, I know you guys had some progress there before things let out. So any updates?
So I'll start us off. So about the every 15 minutes program, which, a reminder, is a drunk driving awareness program that we're trying to reinstate back at CHS. We were unable to meet with the principal because she stepped down in the last few weeks before school ended. So there's a lot of stuff going on, as you can imagine, graduating seniors, incoming freshmen. We couldn't get a meeting with the other vice principals, so we decided to put that on hold, and Jay will talk about the other things that we're looking into. But last thing about the every 15 minutes program is we expect to have a meeting when school gets started up again in late August with the new principal.
Great. And obviously anything we can do as a commission to help on that, we'll sync up.
Yeah, and after the new principal kind of, gets adjusted to Calabasas, there are a few other things that we also want to talk about. So I recently came across it was like a mental health training program, and there's other similar programs for public safety as well, but they actually will come to your area, and they do it at schools as well, and it's a potential training for the students. So that's something that I'm going to look further into, that could be potentially implemented into later in the school year. And then I think, potentially working with the MYC, or the Mayor's Youth Council, on some of these things as well, because I think Ryan is a member of the Mayor's Youth Council, and I'm a part of a subcommittee as well, so that would be very possible. And then one other thing was, I think Joe mentioned about having, more youth participants in kind of in Zone Haven and even in other different, scenarios. I think that's a great idea. I mean, having the youth kind of get involved or be educated through even educational brochures that we can look further into, and kind of developing the resources that we can distribute to everyone would be a great idea. So we're looking further into kind of having that civic engagement and participation as well. So yeah, that's pretty much it.
That's great. Thank you both. I think there's lots of opportunities as the school year begins. Hopefully, new principal, new progress. So yeah, timing was a little tough. Understood. On our side, crime and law enforcement was Sharon and myself. Sharon, did you want to talk a little bit more about our meeting we had, and I can hit the others?
I actually think I touched on a lot of it, because she explained to us what her initiatives were for the city, and they actually have an acronym that they're working with, which is called TIDE, and embedded in all of that is things that are moving to help facilitate, with the lack of bodies, things that can be done. They're looking at drones, they're looking at the technology in the center that they're in, which we got to go into. There's a lot happening, and she was and it was a great meeting from the standpoint that she was excited to actually have touch with this commission, because she realizes that we can be with the city's support. Of course, anything we do will fly through the city's office, through Debbie and Mike, but we wouldn't do anything without the support of the city. But it was very good, and we did talk a lot. We talked about the Explorer and the volunteer, and I think that's something that we can do. And we talked about grant programs for them to get additional support for things that they're trying to do, whether it was related to drones or whatever it is.
Great. Yeah, it was quite productive. I think a great first step to many conversations in the future. Additionally, we had our kind of priority meeting, I'd say, with Mayor Shapiro, Mayor Pro Tem Weintraub, just to talk about their vision with their public safety interests and task force for the city. So I think at this point we're very much aligned from our commission, from the leadership of the city. So really it's just focusing on how we can help prioritize the issues, what we can get done, what's going to take longer, what we can afford to do, what kind of staffing is needed. So no doubt there will be many more conversations when it comes to how our commission can further integrate, to Joe, to your point, with other commissions also, because there's a lot of talented people on these other commissions that work very closely in the same areas. So I think there's a lot of opportunities there. Lastly, with focus on retail crime, I reached out to both the National Retail Federation and the California Retail Association to speak with them a little bit about what resources may be available for our store owners and retailers within the city, and what our law enforcement resources may be. So there are some unique grant programs that are potentially available to us through our sheriff's department and retailers in combination. So I've got a little bit more research to do on that, and then we'll come back to the city and to the sheriffs with some of those options. But there's definitely money and opportunity out there to invest in retail crime prevention and technology. So more to come on that. But I think overall, I would ask this group that we continue with these subcommittees and subgroups. I think it may. I think there's value in probably a follow-up before our next meeting to continue to prioritize what we want to do and what we want to focus on, especially as the school year is starting. So I will try to do some outreach, I think, maybe in the next month or so to see what we can really focus on and what we all feel is the right direction as we go forward. So thanks to everybody, though. I think it's a great way to keep everyone engaged and keep things moving forward. Yeah, Brian.
Just one quick question. In your discussions with Captain C2, was she able to get her drones approved by the county?
They're getting closer.
Yes.
They are
Okay.
getting closer. So yes, it is.
Okay.
It is very much high on her agenda. It is the D in her TIDE acronym. So yes, they are working closer to the approvals they need to work those in. With that, we'll hand things over to Mike and Debbie. We got a lot of updates, actually. A lot going on. And I know the EOC training was quite interesting. I was able to participate that at least as an onlooker, and it was great to see everybody come together for the drill. So we can speak a little more to those.
Okay, commissioners, I thought I might, in the interest of time, let you ask any questions that are without going over reading the report off, if that's okay. I could go through it quickly. We talked about EOC training, but is there anything, particular questions in the report that you wanted to ask us about any activity in the last couple months?
I was interested in this wildfire workshop. It said staff attended. Was that you and Debbie, or?
That's the
And
message.
are there opportunities for commissioners to get involved?
Yeah, that was, what was that, IPOS? It was the FEMA web. And
That was the messaging. It was the WIA messaging for wildfire. It was focused on wildfire, though.
Okay, yeah, it said wildfire-focused alert and warning technical assistance.
Exactly.
So that is what?
they teach you, or they taught us how to craft a message that made sense to everybody.
Oh, good.
clear
Because
and-
that's certainly something that comes up all the time.
Right.
If we're going to push to get amateur radio operators involved, it's Norma did a fabulous job of during the drill. Her reports were like bang on, and she knew exactly what to say. And I went, "Wow, how'd you learn that?"
FEMA's going to standardize. There's 5 different points that they want to hit when they're doing a message, and FEMA's going to standardize those. They're still working on it. It probably won't come out until the fall, but with the wildfire workshop that we attended, they spoke specifically. There was a lot of wildfire science in there. So to be honest, I've had all that. I was more interested in the messaging,
Yeah.
and I'm really interested in the messaging hitting those 5 points, so that way people get the clarity of the message and get it quickly, because we only have, was it 360 characters? Yeah, 360 characters. Now that's a lot more than it used to be, but you'd be surprised
Yeah.
on how. And in prior workshops, we got to look at messages and see what was missing. So we're learning more, and we're going to take more workshops in the future on messaging. And Michael Russo will be included in it. We have a cadre of folks that are learning Blackboard Connect. So that way when Debbie's gone on vacation or something, one of the rest of us could do it, just to make sure.
Good. All right, thank you.
Anything else here? I didn't want to get out. I mean, I could certainly, if the commissioners would like, I'll go through the whole report.
No, I think questions are good. Brian?
Okay.
I think we're good. Actually,
Okay.
it's part question, part future agenda items. I'd love to get back into the city's caches and see what's in there, and start talking about what we should be doing with them, with the whole concept of distributed emergency resources.
Right, and I think that's going to be part of the CERT program. You know, we'll tie those together,
Okay,
so.
all right. Thank you.
That's part of the moving parts we're talking about.
Norma, any questions, follow-up?
And no questions from me. Thank you.
Good. Anything, Sharon? Great. Only follow-up I had, I know there was a little bit of struggle with some of the emergency gate access. So just, it looks like little progress is being made, so that's positive.
I would tell you, yes, and we're actually doing an exercise with Westridge this Wednesday.
Great.
And we've actually had a recent meeting with one of the other HOAs, and we're working with CPHA to get the rest of them on board. We're getting there.
Great.
So,
That's important.
I'm happy to report last week we had another meeting, so we're getting there.
And is there a similar sort of approach program for the west side?
It depends on, we're going to look at that, but I think what we're dealing with right now, especially along the Parkway Calabasas corridor, is the ability to get folks out at Parkway Calabasas is closed. either for a short period of time or a long period, and also evacuating folks out the back, the Cordova Gate, Dry Canyon, Cold Creek out the back. So we're going to look at all the, we have an inventory of security gates, and we're working closely with the Sheriff's Department on what gates have locks on them, and what gate, we're doing an inventory all over again, because some of the information wasn't accurate. It changes. It does, and we have to keep up on it.
Great. Well, thank you both. It's been
Thank you.
a busy quarter.
I promise I'll do the whole report next time.
That's all right. It was a very efficient report.
Thank you.
That's a good thing. For future agenda items, I know we've got a few. I don't think we have any particular updates with the first couple, unless, Debbie, have you heard anything about teen court? It seems pretty quiet recently.
No, I haven't heard anything on teen court or the appreciation luncheon.
Okay. I know the fentanyl discussion, there was a local training presentation on that, the city hosted. So that, I'm sure, no doubt, will continue on, and I think as school starts also, maybe an opportunity to work that into a bigger conversation into our next meeting, or figure something out for that. Crime prevention expo, I think as we land closer to this contract, sheriff's contract, along with some of the conversations we've started to have, there'll be an better opportunity probably to have that, I'm sure, as we get later in the year or even early next year. So I think we'll table that one for a bit too. For Sharon, you mentioned you've got an ad for an agenda item for the next time.
When we've talked about this before, I was wondering, in order to help get the messaging out there about what the Explorers are all about, is it possible to get someone in to do a presentation for us? That would be greatly appreciated.
Yes, we can do that. Deputy DiMatteo. He has connections.
Thank you.
Great. Any other future agenda ads at this time?
I think that Debbie covered it when she said the cash and the cert for next session. So I think we can rely on Debbie.
Great. Quick question on CERT, Debbie, because I always forget. Is this something that we've done with the high schools, with the high school in particular? Have they done a CERT team at the high school?
They're not at the high school, but they're allowed to attend ours.
Got it. Okay. It might be something we
They
look to
do
work
have a
with you guys.
program, a teen cert program, but I don't think they have it. I know Malibu does teach that course.
Okay. Might be something we look at to add to the, if we're going to have a CERT conversation, it might be something we could look to add, because I would imagine there would be a great deal of interest, I hope, at least with our students here. Excellent. We've got a couple to add then, so I think with that, can we get a motion to adjourn tonight's meeting? Sharon, do we have a second?
I'll second. We're refusing to adjourn.
I think there is a second in there. All in favor on that one? Yeah. Aye. Well, thank you, everybody. We will adjourn tonight. We will get together again for our next Public Safety Commission meeting on October 23rd, 2023, 6 p.m. These chambers. So thank you, everybody, for the time tonight, for the input. We'll see you then.